What if the love of your life walked back into the room, 12 years after leaving you at the altar? Would you run? Would you forgive? Or would you pretend your heart didn't just skip a beat the moment his eyes met yours? This isn't just a story about love lost. It's about love that refused to die. Set in the hauntingly beautiful streets of Savannah, where secrets cling to the trees like Spanish moss, and every corner echoes with memories, comes a second chance neither of them saw coming. She's no longer the woman who waited for him, and he's no longer the man who left. But fate doesn't care about timing, and when the past collides with the present, what's left behind is a story you won't forget. So lean in, take a breath, and let me tell you what happened when Charlotte Mayfield came home. Some wounds don't bleed anymore, but they still ache. 12 years after vanishing without a word, Charlotte Mayfield returned to Savannah. The city hadn't changed much. Its streets were still dressed in Spanish moss, secrets still whispered from every brick, and the scent of magnolia still clung to the warm air. But Charlotte was no longer the girl who once stood in lace and lace-up hope, waiting at an altar for a man who never came. Now, she stepped out of a taxi in tailored heels, a portfolio in her hand, and fire in her veins. She was here for work, nothing more. The project was simple, on paper: revitalize the historic Forsyth Park. But reality was never simple when the past walked beside you, especially when the man you never stopped loving was now the lead engineer. "Charlotte," Clara chirped, her bright-eyed assistant who hadn't yet learned when to stop talking. "If I were you, I'd walk in like the star of the show." Charlotte rolled her eyes, but smiled. She hadn't smiled much lately. Inside the grand chandelier-lit hall, her nerves kicked in, not because of the presentation, but because of the possibility. She hadn't seen him in 12 years, not since he destroyed her. And then, there he was, Graham Delaney, sitting in the back, like time hadn't touched him, blue-gray eyes, tousled charm, and that relaxed, maddening smirk. She stumbled on a word. He noticed. Of course he did. The room vanished around her for a moment. Just his gaze, just her heartbeat. And when it was over, and Clara teased her with a, "So that's the famous Graham?" Charlotte whispered, "That's him. That's all you need to know." But Graham wasn't done. He crossed the room like he had every right to. "So, Mayfield," he drawled, "decided to come back and finish what you started?" Charlotte didn't flinch. "I'm here to revitalize the park, not revisit the past." But the past was already revisiting her, with every look he gave her, every memory her heart betrayed. That night, alone in her hotel room, she pulled out an old letter, the last one he ever sent, a letter she never understood, until now. Because Graham wasn't just a ghost anymore. He was real, and dangerously close. Charlotte sat on the edge of the hotel bed, the hum of the city outside muffled by heavy curtains. In her lap was a small box, faded and worn from years of being untouched. Inside it lay the letter, the last one Graham ever sent. She hadn't opened it in years, not since she memorized every word, every lie, or at least what she thought were lies. But tonight, with his voice still echoing in her head and his gaze burning beneath her skin, she couldn't resist. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper. "Charlotte, I wish I were braver. I wish I could be the man who deserves you. But things are happening I can't explain, not yet. If you hate me, I won't blame you. Just know, it's not because I stopped loving you. It's because I still do. And loving you means letting you go. G." 12 years ago, that letter shattered her. Now it left her more confused than ever. Why hadn't he told her the truth then? Why walk away instead of fighting for her? Across town, Graham stared at an old photo of them, young, laughing, in love, beneath the trees of Forsyth Park. He hadn't meant to fall in love with her again. He never stopped. But he couldn't protect her if she didn't trust him, and danger was closer than either of them realized. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. She's in danger. Protect her, or lose her again. His blood ran cold. At that exact moment, Charlotte's phone lit up. Anonymous. "Be careful who you trust. This project isn't what it seems." Her heart thudded. Was Graham warning her, or was he the danger? The next morning, The sun rose over Savannah like golden fire, but Charlotte felt none of its warmth. During the site inspection at the park, she tried to stay focused, but every rustle of leaves felt like a whisper of the past. And then, his voice again. "Still overthinking everything, Mayfield?" Graham leaned against a tree trunk, arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Charlotte didn't even glance up from her clipboard. "I'm working." "You're spiraling." She snapped the clipboard shut and finally faced him. "And you're still great at offering opinions no one asked for. Call it talent." His smile deepened. "I always had a thing for complicated women with clipboards." He stepped closer, too close. Charlotte's breath hitched. His eyes were stormy today, not playful, intense, dangerous. "I'm not nervous," she said, though her voice betrayed her. "Of course not," Graham said softly. "But I am. Because I'm standing next to the woman I let go. And every second, I wonder if I'll get the chance to fix it." She blinked. That wasn't a line. It was a confession. But she couldn't let herself fall for that again. Not after what he did. Not after what he didn't do. She stepped back. "Let's keep this professional." Graham nodded, but his eyes lingered on her like a promise. "Sure, Mayfield, whatever helps you sleep at night." But that night, she didn't sleep. Not when her heart kept whispering the same truth she'd buried for 12 years. She never stopped loving him either. The sky over Savannah darkened like a held breath. The inspection had gone smoothly, until the wind shifted, until the light bent sideways, and until Graham showed up beside her again. "You're lucky you're so stubborn," he said, leaning on a nearby bench, as if they weren't standing under brewing storm clouds. "I'm not sure how else you'd survive in this world." Charlotte didn't even glance at him. "Stubbornness is what keeps people like you from deciding what I should or shouldn't do." Graham chuckled, a sound too smooth, too deep. "Mayfield, I never tried to control you. You've always done a fine job of doing the opposite of whatever I suggest." Thunder rolled low and slow through the trees, and then the sky cracked open. Raindrops fell heavy and sudden, smacking the dusty paths and splattering over Charlotte's files. "Oh, come on," she hissed, clutching her clipboard to her chest. Graham grabbed her wrist without hesitation. "Come on, this way." They ran through the downpour, their feet slipping over wet gravel. His hand never left hers until he shoved open a crooked old door hidden behind overgrown vines. An abandoned greenhouse. Its windows were streaked with grime, some panes shattered, ivy curling through cracks in the walls. But it was shelter. They stumbled inside, soaked, breathless. Water dripped from Charlotte's hair, her clothes clinging to her like silk. "Great job leading me into a ruin," she snapped, arms crossed against the chill. Graham laughed, shaking the water from his jacket. "It's better than getting struck by lightning." His eyes dropped, just for a second, to the way her blouse stuck to her skin. She noticed. "Don't." He raised his hands. "What? I wasn't—" "You were," she cut him off, turning away. "Whatever this is, Graham, whatever you think this moment is, it's not." He stepped closer. "And what do you think it is?" Charlotte didn't answer, because she didn't know. The silence filled with the rhythm of rain pounding the glass overhead. Her heartbeat added its own staccato underneath. "You don't trust me," he said softly now. "No," she whispered. "I don't. You had your chance, and you destroyed me." He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked away, jaw tight. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you." She turned to him sharply. "Then why? Why walk away? Why leave me standing there in that church with no answers?" Graham ran a hand through his damp hair, eyes darker than the storm outside. "I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" He looked at her then, really looked, like every word would cost him. "From me," he said. Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. "There were things happening," he went on, "things I couldn't drag you into. My family was being threatened, and they used you to do it, so I left. I let you hate me because it was the only way to keep you safe." Her chest rose and fell, rage and heartbreak wrestling beneath her skin. "You let me break," she said, voice cracking. "Alone, for 12 years. "I never stopped loving you, Charlotte," he whispered. The space between them evaporated. She didn't know who moved first. But suddenly, his hand was brushing a strand of wet hair from her cheek. His eyes soft, reverent. "You don't have to fight me," he said. Not anymore. Charlotte looked into his eyes, and for a split second, she wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. She stepped back. "The rain's letting up," she said stiffly. "We should get back to work." Graham didn't try to stop her this time, but as she walked away from that greenhouse, Charlotte knew one thing for certain. The storm hadn't passed. It had just begun. That evening, Forsyth Park shimmered under rows of lanterns, strung from tree to tree, like fallen stars. The community event buzzed with laughter, warm lights, and glasses clinking. But for Charlotte, everything felt just a little off-kilter, like she was watching the night through a foggy window. She did her best to avoid Graham. He, of course, was everywhere, laughing with guests, charming investors, sending her those quick glances across the lawn, like he could still read her thoughts, like he still had the right to try. Charlotte buried herself in conversations, rattling off statistics and restoration timelines like they were armor. But the memory of the greenhouse clung to her skin, like the rain she still hadn't dried from. She couldn't forget what he said, what he almost made her believe. As the crowd thinned, she wandered down one of the quieter paths, a trail lined with twinkling lights, petals drifting in the breeze. She needed space. She needed clarity. Instead, she got him. "Mayfield." His voice was low, almost hesitant, a softness she hadn't heard in years. She turned. He stood under the glow of a hanging lantern, hands in his pockets, looking at her like she was the only thing he could see. "You don't know when to give up, do you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. He didn't smile. "Not when it comes to you." He stepped toward her. One step, then another. She didn't move. And then, without warning, he kissed her. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't polite. It was a collision, of years unsaid, of love unsurrendered, of pain unresolved. It stole her breath, bent time, and left her standing there, heart pounding, fists clenched, soul spinning. When he finally pulled away, her eyes were wide, her voice barely a whisper. "You can't do that." "I know," he said, voice rough, "but I couldn't help it." She took a shaky step back, arms crossing tightly. "You don't get to just kiss me and undo everything." "I'm not trying to undo anything," he said. I need you to know I never stopped." Charlotte's heart screamed at her, but her voice was ice. "We're still a disaster, Graham." He nodded slowly, eyes searching hers. "Maybe, but I'd rather be a disaster with you than spend one more year pretending I'm whole without you." She didn't have an answer, so she walked away. But her lips still burned from his kiss. And her heart was no longer sure where the danger really was, in the threat surrounding her, or in the man who had just kissed her like he still owned a piece of her soul. The next morning, the conference room buzzed with the usual shuffle of papers, murmurs of timelines, and projected graphs on glowing screens. Charlotte sat in the corner, fingers tapping absently on the table, her mind still tangled in the kiss from the night before. Everything about it had felt wrong, and yet, heartbreakingly right. She was barely listening when the door opened. Given Graham Delaney's impeccable record with urban revitalization, the mayor announced in his syrupy politician voice, "We believe it's in the project's best interest that he take on a more direct leadership role." The words struck Charlotte like a slap. There was a pause. No one breathed. Graham didn't say a word. He just tilted his head slightly, unreadable. Charlotte's face flushed with heat. She waited until the meeting ended. Then, without a word, she marched down the hallway after him. "Graham," he turned, unsurprised. "We need to talk, now." She pushed open the nearest empty room and stepped inside. He followed, silent. Charlotte whirled around, her arms crossed, voice sharp. "Was this your idea? Did you go behind my back and set this up with the mayor?" His expression barely changed. "Do you really think I need to orchestrate anything to challenge you, Mayfield?" "Don't deflect," she snapped. "You made me look weak." "Or maybe," he said evenly, "you've been working so hard to prove you don't need me that you've accidentally convinced others the same thing." She blinked, caught off guard. Graham stepped closer, voice dropping. "You're not fighting for this project anymore. You're fighting against me. You always have." Her mouth opened, closed. "You don't get to say that, not after everything." "You want the truth?" he said, suddenly fierce. Fine. You never trusted me. Not really. Not back then. Not now. And that's what broke us. Charlotte laughed, a short, bitter sound. Don't rewrite history. You left me. I was blackmailed, Charlotte. The room went still. What? My family, he said quietly, the mask slipping. They were involved in something. I got threats. If I married you, they'd ruin you, destroy everything you had. Your business, your name. He looked away. So I left. Let you think I was the villain. Charlotte stared at him, her world tilting, her breath stuck in her chest. You did all that to protect me? He looked at her then, eyes filled with raw regret. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were everything good in my life, and I thought, if I disappeared, I could keep you safe. You broke my heart, she said, voice shaking. I know, he whispered, and I've hated myself every day since. Silence filled the room like fog, thick, heavy, unrelenting. You had a choice, she said finally. You always had a choice, and you chose to destroy me. Graham's shoulders sagged under the weight of her words. Believe what you want, but I never stopped loving you. Never. He turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the stillness. Her hands trembled, not from rage, but from the weight of the truth. He had loved her. He had tried to protect her, and in doing so, he had broken her. But was it too late? Night fell over Savannah like a silk curtain, quiet and heavy. In the makeshift office near the park grounds, Charlotte sat hunched over blueprints, barely seeing the lines. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. Her heart, far colder. The door creaked open. She didn't need to look up. I'm fine, Clara, she said. But it wasn't Clara. I know, Graham said gently. She froze. He stepped inside, cautious but calm, holding 2 mugs. Hot this time. Charlotte stared at him, unsure whether to scream or cry. You always used to forget to drink it while it was still warm, he said with a soft smile, setting the mug down beside her. She didn't reply. Silence wrapped around them like a second skin. For a while, they worked side by side, talking about irrigation plans, lighting schedules, anything but what mattered, until their hands brushed reaching for the same paper. She flinched, but he didn't pull away. Sorry, he murmured. She didn't answer, couldn't. Her throat felt tight. Then, without warning, he leaned in and kissed her. Not like before. This kiss was slow, heartbreaking, as if he were asking, not taking, as if he were saying, I'm still here. I still choose you. When they finally pulled apart, their breaths shallow, Charlotte whispered, That shouldn't have happened. I know, he said, but I can't pretend I don't want you. She stood, pushing the chair back too hard. You don't get to just kiss me, and erase 12 years of silence. He didn't move. I'm not trying to erase anything. I'm asking you to believe me. You said your family was threatened, she said, crossing her arms. But that's not the full story, is it? Graham sighed, sitting back down. No, it's not. He rubbed the back of his neck, the way he always did when he was nervous. Charlotte remembered that, too well. I wasn't just protecting you from them, Ishumesh, he said. I was protecting you. From me. Her brow furrowed. I've been dealing with health issues. Since before the wedding, he confessed. It's not terminal, but it's complicated. I was terrified you'd see me differently, that I'd become a burden. Charlotte's eyes widened. You're sick? I manage it, he said quickly. But back then, I didn't have answers, just fear. I thought if you saw the worst of me, you'd run. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You never gave me the chance to prove you wrong. A beat passed, then another. She stepped closer, tears glassing her eyes. You idiot, she said, voice trembling. Graham blinked, startled. What? You're an idiot, she repeated, for thinking I would have left you, for making that decision for me. He swallowed hard. I would have chosen you, Graham, she whispered. Always. And then, she kissed him. This time, the kiss wasn't desperation. It was forgiveness. It was everything neither of them had the courage to say for 12 years. And when they broke apart, their foreheads pressed together, he whispered, I won't get it wrong again. I promise. Charlotte nodded. But before either of them could say more, a rustling sound outside shattered the moment. Graham moved instantly, pulling her behind him, scanning the darkness beyond the window. "It's okay," he said softly, his stance protective. "I've got you." And in that moment, Charlotte knew something she hadn't dared believe for over a decade. She was safe, not because she didn't still fear the future, but because she no longer feared facing it with him. The wind whispered through the trees that night, brushing against the lantern-lit paths of Forsyth Park. The soft rustle of magnolia petals falling on damp grass. The hush of a city holding its breath. Charlotte walked beside Graham, their fingers intertwined, neither speaking. Words weren't needed now. Not tonight. But her heart wasn't calm. Not completely. The cryptic message she'd received still lingered like a shadow in the back of her mind. Leave the project before it's too late. Too late for what? She looked around the park. Everything was perfect. The restored pathways, the new benches, the flowers blooming under moonlight. But perfection, she'd learned, could be the best disguise for danger. Graham seemed to sense her tension. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said suddenly, tightening his grip on her hand. "Even now." "I needed time to think," she replied. "You're being threatened, Charlotte. This isn't something to think about in the dark." She stopped, turning to face him. "This isn't your responsibility." "You're wrong," he said, voice firm. "You've always been my responsibility. You always will be." She wanted to argue, to keep the walls up, but something about the way he looked at her, the quiet desperation behind his protectiveness, left her breathless. "You can't just say things like that," she whispered, "not after everything." "I can," he said, "and I will. Because it's the truth." He cupped her face in his hands. His voice dropped to a promise. "I never stopped loving you. Not once." She wanted to pull away, wanted to stay angry, wanted to protect what was left of her heart. But it was too late, because her heart was already his. Still, before she could say anything, he hesitated. "There's more," he said, barely above a whisper. "About that night, the threats, my family." Charlotte's breath caught. But before he could explain, a sudden crack echoed through the trees. A branch? No. Graham's body moved instantly, pulling her behind him. His eyes scanned the shadows. Then, from across the field, a figure moved, dark, slow, deliberate. Charlotte's heart pounded as Graham stepped forward, shielding her with his own body. "Stay behind me," he ordered. "I'm not leaving you," she said through clenched teeth. The figure paused, just at the edge of the light, then disappeared into the trees. Graham chased forward, only to stop after a few paces. He cursed under his breath. Whoever it was, they were gone. Fast, calculated. This wasn't a random wanderer. This was a warning. He returned to her, jaw tight, eyes burning with frustration. "We're not safe here," he said. "But who would—" "I don't know yet," he growled. "But I promise you this, Charlotte. Whoever's behind this, they're going to regret ever threatening you." Later that night, back at her apartment, Charlotte sat in silence. The doors were locked, the alarms checked twice. Still, she didn't feel safe, until he spoke. "I'm not just here to finish a project," Graham said quietly. "I'm here to protect you, from the past, from whatever this is." She turned toward him, her voice small, but steady. "Then tell me everything. No more secrets." He took a breath, then nodded. And as he began to speak, slowly, painfully, the truth finally came to light. About his father's debts, the anonymous threats, the silent deal that cost him the only woman he ever loved. The full story, the truth that had broken them. Now, it might be the only thing that could save them. The grand reopening of Forsyth Park was nothing short of magical. String lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth. Music floated gently through the air. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the restored garden paths. People admired the transformation, blissfully unaware of the storm that had passed beneath it all. Charlotte stood near the gazebo, now freshly painted, draped in soft florals, watching the crowd with a quiet smile. Her blue dress shimmered under the lights, but it was her eyes that held the glow of someone who had finally, after years of carrying hurt, begun to breathe again. Admiring or assessing, came Clara's voice behind her. Charlotte turned, amused. Careful observation, Clara grinned. Sure, just like how you're carefully observing Graham talking to donors while casually glancing this way every 30 seconds. Charlotte blushed. Before she could respond, Graham appeared beside them, holding 2 champagne flutes. He handed one to Charlotte with a smile that could melt marble. Talking about me again? He teased. Someone has to keep your ego in check, Clara replied, giving Charlotte a wink before vanishing into the crowd. Charlotte sipped the drink, eyeing him over the rim. You're dangerously close to believing your own hype. Oh. He leaned in, voice lower. And what's the word on me tonight? That you're annoying, stubborn, and absolutely insufferable. He smirked. You forgot devastatingly handsome. Charlotte rolled her eyes, but the laughter in her throat betrayed her. But then, his tone shifted. I don't want to be charming, Charlotte, he said softly. I just want to be real, with you. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in years, saw the man he was, not the boy who'd left her. As the crowd thinned, she wandered beneath one of the oldest magnolia trees, heart pounding gently beneath her ribs. Graham found her there. The soft glow of lanterns cast gold across his face. He reached into his pocket, and her breath caught. Don't panic, he said, smiling nervously. It's not flashy, or rehearsed. He opened the small velvet box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, timeless, like her. I know I'm not perfect, he said, stepping closer. And I know I've messed up more than once. But I also know this, he paused. You're the only person who's ever made me want to fight for something bigger than myself. So, marry me, Charlotte, not because it's convenient, but because you still look at me like I might be worth the risk. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't cry. She smiled, stepped forward, and slid the ring onto her finger. Yes, she whispered, I'll marry you. When he kissed her, the world around them seemed to pause, just long enough for the past to forgive itself and the future to begin. That night, beneath the same trees where love was once lost and found again, Charlotte and Graham stood as equals, as partners, as 2 souls who had survived heartbreak, secrets, silence, and still chose each other. Because sometimes the best stories aren't the ones that start perfect. They're the ones where love leaves but finds its way home.